Hey everyone! Tonight we're journeying back through the mists of time to explore the most enigmatic, awe-inspiring, and utterly fascinating ancient civilizations that once ruled our world. From colossal monuments that defy explanation to empires that vanished without a trace. From underground cities carved into bedrock to codes and scripts so mysterious, they've kept archaeologists awake for centuries. Human civilization has existed for roughly 6,000 years of recorded history, yet we've only uncovered fragments of our collective past. That means there are countless lost worlds waiting beneath the soil, filled with mysteries that would make your most vivid dreams seem like pale shadows of our true heritage. So before we embark on this journey through time together, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy exploring these ancient mysteries with me. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what civilization fascinates you the most. It's always intriguing to see who's curious enough to join us on these nightly journeys into humanity's forgotten past. Now settle in, maybe pull up your covers, and let's ease into tonight's exploration of history's most captivating lost empires. When you think of ancient civilizations, you might picture Egyptian pyramids, Roman colosseums, and perhaps Mayan temples rising from dense jungles. But tonight, we're going somewhere else entirely. We're going to the places where time seems to stand still, where stone monuments have outlasted their creators by millennia, and where cultures thrive that modern history seems to have forgotten. The past isn't just dates and artifacts. It's a multi-dimensional tapestry of human experience that exists in the foundations of our present world, filled with societies so sophisticated they challenge our notions of progress, where kings and queens commanded powers that shaped landscapes, where astronomers mapped the stars with stunning precision, and where the very architecture itself seems to speak a language we're only beginning to understand. Picture this. You're standing atop a windswept plateau as the sun rises, casting golden light across megalithic stones positioned with mathematical precision. The air is cool and still, carrying the whispers of 10,000 years of human ritual. But around you, stretching for miles in every direction, is an ancient landscape so deliberately shaped that even our most advanced modern analysis struggles to comprehend its purpose. The past doesn't care about your preconceptions or your modern perspective. It operated by rules so different from our technology-driven minds that even our most distinguished historians struggle to interpret them. Deep in the jungles and deserts, hidden beneath centuries of soil and vegetation, the pressure of time has preserved secrets from civilizations that rose and fell while leaving only the faintest traces of their existence. It would be like having the collective knowledge of thousands of years of human innovation compressed into artifacts we can barely recognize. Not just preserved, encoded. Objects that have never been fully understood, texts that have never been completely translated, monuments aligned with celestial bodies with such precision it defies coincidence. They've left messages in stone and metal, in pottery and parchment, in alignments and orientations that have withstood the erosion of millennia. Some of them reveal themselves only at specific moments, when the sun hits at precise angles, creating patterns of light and shadow that appear for mere minutes before vanishing again. But here's what really keeps archaeologists digging through the night. We keep finding new sites, new artifacts, new evidence that challenges everything we thought we knew about human history. Every excavation brings to light remnants of societies that appear to have possessed knowledge they shouldn't have had, technologies that shouldn't have been possible, with the tools we believe they had access to. And for every new discovery, a dozen more questions emerge. History has been keeping secrets for thousands of years, buried beneath desert sands and tangled jungle roots. But tonight, we're going to unearth these forgotten worlds and explore some of the most mind-expanding, paradigm-shifting, absolutely mesmerizing mysteries that ancient civilizations left behind. Because if you think you know human history, wait until you hear about the sophisticated societies that flourished and vanished long before our modern era began. And the truly humbling part, we're just beginning to understand our own story. Let's start our journey in a place that has fascinated explorers and scholars for centuries, ancient Egypt. Located along the life-giving Nile River, this civilization flourished for over 3,000 years, creating monuments of such scale and precision that they continue to baffle modern engineers. To put that in perspective, Cleopatra lived closer in time to the invention of the iPhone than to the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The Egyptian civilization isn't just old, it's primordial. The Great Pyramid stands as a testament to capabilities that seem impossible for its time, aligned to true north with an accuracy of just 3/60ths of a degree. The temperature inside remains constant at exactly 68 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of the blistering desert heat outside. The precision of its construction is so exact that you couldn't slide a credit card between many of its massive stone blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons and transported from quarries over 500 miles away. But how did they achieve such feats without modern technology? How did they cut, move, and place stones with such mathematical precision? The mainstream explanation involves ramps, rollers, and thousands of workers, yet experimental archaeologists have struggled to replicate these methods, even on a much smaller scale. And the pyramids are just the beginning. The Temple of Hathor at Dendera contains relief carvings that some interpret as depicting electrical lighting systems, with what appears to be filaments and bulbous chambers resembling modern light bulbs. Deep within the Serapeum of Saqqara rest enormous granite boxes, carved with laser-like precision, their purpose still debated by experts who struggle to explain how such massive objects were manipulated with such exactitude. Perhaps most puzzling is the fact that many Egyptian monuments align with astronomical events and celestial bodies in ways that would require sophisticated mathematical knowledge. The descending passage in the Great Pyramid points directly to where the North Star would have been positioned when the pyramid was built, accounting for the precession of the equinoxes, a 26,000-year cycle that modern astronomy only confirmed in recent centuries. The Egyptians themselves claimed their knowledge came from gods who walked among them in the distant past, divine beings they called the Neteru. Their hieroglyphic texts speak of a first time or Zep-Tepi, when these godlike beings established Egyptian civilization fully formed, with its writing system, astronomical knowledge, and architectural expertise already developed. It's as though this ancient culture didn't evolve gradually, but appeared suddenly with its most impressive achievements already realized. Beneath the shifting sands of the Giza Plateau, recent ground-penetrating radar has revealed chambers and tunnels that remain unexplored, holding who knows what additional mysteries. And in the Cairo Museum, artifacts like the Sabu disk display machining that would be challenging even with modern tools, a sophisticated, mathematically precise object, carved from extremely hard stone that appears to have been lathed with technology that shouldn't have existed 5,000 years ago. The ancient Egyptians measured time itself differently, operating on cycles within cycles, understanding the precession of the equinoxes and tracking stellar movements across vast periods. Their calendar was so accurate that when Julius Caesar needed to reform the Roman calendar, he brought in Egyptian astronomers to help create the Julian system that formed the basis of our modern calendar. Whispers of even older civilizations echo through Egyptian texts, with references to a land called Punt that some researchers believe may have been part of a much older, now submerged culture. The Sphinx itself shows signs of water erosion that geologists date to a period long before conventional dating places, Egyptian civilization, suggesting it may be thousands of years older than officially recognized. As the desert winds blow across these ancient monuments, they carry questions that have no easy answers, riddles carved in stone that continue to challenge our understanding. What if what we know about ancient Egypt is just the surface of a much deeper, more complex story? What if the conventional timeline of human civilization is missing crucial chapters? Let the weight of these ancient stones carry you deeper into history's mysteries as we drift toward another enigmatic culture, whose achievements still defy easy explanation. Close your eyes and imagine crossing oceans to the lush jungles of Central America, where another ancient civilization created wonders that continue to astonish us today. The Maya, masters of time and celestial observation, built a culture so mathematically sophisticated that their calendar could predict eclipses thousands of years in the future with pinpoint accuracy. Their understanding of zero as a mathematical concept predated European adoption by centuries, allowing for calculations of mind-boggling complexity. Deep in the rainforests of Guatemala, Mexico, and Belize, their step pyramids rise above the canopy, oriented to capture specific celestial events and aligned with surprising precision to astronomical phenomena. At Chichen Itza, the famous pyramid of Cahuacan was designed so that on the spring and fall equinoxes, the play of light and shadow creates the illusion of a serpent descending the northern stairway, a feat of astronomical and architectural planning that required profound understanding of solar positioning. The Central Plaza at Teotihuacan, though not strictly Mayan but influential in Mesoamerican culture, replicates the solar system in its layout, with buildings positioned to represent planets at specific distances. The Maya tracked Venus with an accuracy that wasn't matched in Europe until the Renaissance, understanding its 584-day cycle with just a 2-hour margin of error over a 481-year period. Their astronomical codices predicted celestial events with such precision that modern astronomers have used them to correct their own calculations. But perhaps most intriguing is their conception of time itself, viewing it not as linear but as cyclical, with interlocking wheels of days, months, years, and ages turning within greater cosmic cycles. The famous Mayan long count calendar, which tracks over 5,000 years in a single cycle, is actually just one gear in a much larger system that follows millions of years of cosmic time. How did they achieve such mathematical and astronomical sophistication without modern instruments? How did they map Venus, Mars, and other celestial bodies with such accuracy using only naked eye observations? The conventional explanation involves generations of careful observation, but some researchers question whether such precision could have been achieved without more advanced measuring tools than the historical record acknowledges. The Maya themselves spoke of receiving knowledge from visitors they called the bearers of time, mysterious teachers who brought mathematics, astronomy, and architecture to their culture in the distant past. Their creation myth, the Popol Vuh, describes multiple previous ages of humanity, each ending in cataclysm, suggesting they possessed some awareness of civilizations that existed before their own. Hidden deep in the jungle, the site of El Mirador contains pyramids larger than those at the more famous sites, with complex systems of water management and urban planning that predate the classic Maya period. Recent LiDAR scanning of the Guatemalan rainforest has revealed tens of thousands of previously unknown structures, suggesting a civilization far more extensive and interconnected than previously believed. The Maya created a writing system so complex that it took modern scholars decades to begin deciphering it, with glyphs that combine phonetic elements with conceptual meanings in a sophisticated symbolic language. And yet, despite their remarkable achievements, classic Maya civilization seemingly collapsed in a relatively short time around the 9th century CE, with great cities abandoned to the encroaching jungle. Climate change, warfare, and resource depletion all play roles in conventional explanations for this collapse, but mysteries remain about how such an advanced society could disappear so completely. The descendants of the Maya still live in the region today, carrying fragments of ancient knowledge in their traditions and beliefs, but much of their ancestors' sophisticated understanding has been lost to time. As the jungle slowly reclaims these ancient cities, vines and roots breaking apart even the most massive stone structures, we're reminded of civilization's fragility despite its grandest achievements. What other knowledge might the Maya have possessed that didn't survive in their stone monuments or remaining codices? What wisdom was lost when Spanish conquistadors and zealous priests destroyed their libraries, burning all but 4 of their books? Let the rhythmic drone of tropical insects lull you deeper into contemplation as we travel northward to another American civilization whose sophisticated understanding of their environment continues to surprise archaeologists and historians alike. Feel yourself drifting across landscapes shaped by human hands for purposes we're still trying to understand. In what is now the southeastern United States, the Mississippian culture created massive earthworks and complex societies that rivaled contemporary European developments. At Cahokia, near modern-day St. T. Louis had built a city larger than London was at the time, centered around enormous earthen mounds arranged in alignments that tracked solstices and equinoxes. The largest structure, Monk's Mound, contains more earth than the Great Pyramid of Egypt, requiring millions of hours of human labor to construct using only baskets and simple tools. These earthworks weren't just random hills, but precisely engineered structures requiring sophisticated planning and astronomical knowledge. Many Mississippian sites feature mounds arranged in ways that align with solar and lunar events, creating calendars in Earth that would have helped time agricultural activities and religious ceremonies. The Mississippians created a trade network that spanned from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico, exchanging goods and ideas across vast distances without wheeled vehicles or beasts of burden. They worked copper from the northern Great Lakes into intricate artwork, somehow annealing the metal to make it workable without modern metallurgical knowledge. At Poverty Point in Louisiana, concentric earthen rings dating back 3,500 years suggest an even older tradition of monumental architecture in North America than many history books acknowledge. The site's layout suggests astronomical alignments and possibly acoustic properties that we're only beginning to understand. Further west, in Chaco Canyon, the ancestral Puebloan people built massive multi-story structures perfectly aligned with solar and lunar cycles. The famous sun dagger petroglyph at Fajada Butte marks the summer solstice, winter solstice, and equinoxes through an interplay of light and shadow that required precise astronomical understanding to create. The engineering of Pueblo Bonito includes sophisticated water management systems, precise astronomical alignments, and acoustic properties that suggest an advanced understanding of mathematics and natural principles. The buildings themselves contain over 700 rooms and rose 5 stories high, using construction techniques that created walls still standing after 1,000 years. Roads radiate from Chaco Canyon in straight lines across seemingly impassable terrain, visible from space, but often difficult to detect at ground level. These ancient highways, up to 30 feet wide in places, stretch for hundreds of miles across the desert, connecting far-flung communities in a network whose purpose we still don't fully comprehend. What's particularly mysterious is how these societies achieve such feats without many of the technologies we consider fundamental to large-scale construction. They had no metal tools beyond copper, no wheeled vehicles, no written language as we would recognize it, and yet they manipulated their environment with remarkable precision and mathematical understanding. Both Cahokia and Chaco Canyon were eventually abandoned, their once thriving societies dispersing for reasons that remain debated. Climate change, resource depletion, and social factors all play roles in conventional explanations, but the completeness of their abandonment continues to puzzle researchers. Indigenous oral traditions speak of migrations, conflicts, and environmental changes that may explain these historical shifts, but they also contain references to star beings and sky people who brought knowledge and sometimes warnings of coming changes. These stories, long dismissed as mere myths by Western researchers, are increasingly being reconsidered as potentially containing encoded historical information about real events. Recent archaeological work using advanced technologies has revealed that North America was far more heavily populated and extensively modified by human activity than previously believed. From the earthen effigy mounds of Wisconsin to the shell rings of the southeast coast, evidence of sophisticated cultural development extends much further into the past than conventional history suggested. As you sink deeper into relaxation, imagine the vast networks of knowledge and exchange that connected these ancient American cultures, trading not just goods but ideas, mathematical concepts, and astronomical observations across thousands of miles without modern communication systems. How much of their understanding has been lost? What wisdom might they have possessed that we're only now rediscovering? Let your mind drift now across the Atlantic to the Misty Islands, where one of the most enigmatic ancient cultures created monuments that continue to baffle experts today. Feel the cool dampness of morning fog as we approach the massive stone circles of ancient Britain. Stonehenge stands as perhaps the most famous megalithic structure in the world, its massive stones arranged with mathematical precision that aligns with solstices and equinoxes. But it's just one of hundreds of stone circles, alignments, and artificial mounds that dot the British landscape, creating what some researchers describe as a vast, sacred geography, encoded with astronomical knowledge. The precision of Stonehenge's construction is remarkable even by modern standards. Its stones are shaped to counteract the optical illusion of leaning inward when viewed from below, showing sophisticated understanding of visual perception. The bluestones, weighing up to 4 tons each, were transported from quarries nearly 200 miles away in Wales, a feat that would challenge even modern logistics. But Stonehenge is a relative latecomer in British megalithic culture. Nearby Göbekli Tepe in Turkey predates it by roughly 6,000 years, suggesting that sophisticated stone construction has a much longer history than conventionally acknowledged. The knowledge required to build these structures implies continuous cultural transmission across enormous stretches of time, challenging our understanding of prehistoric societies. Across the British Isles, ley lines appear to connect ancient sites in straight paths that extend for hundreds of miles, creating what some interpret as a vast energy grid encoded in the landscape. At sites like Newgrange in Ireland, passage tombs are aligned so precisely that the winter solstice sunrise illuminates their innermost chambers for just 17 minutes each year, demonstrating remarkable astronomical precision. The ancient Britons tracked celestial cycles with such accuracy that some stone circles appear to function as calculators for predicting eclipses, a feat requiring sophisticated mathematics and generations of careful observation. The knowledge encoded in these stone monuments suggests a much more advanced understanding of astronomy and mathematics than the primitive label often applied to prehistoric cultures. What's particularly puzzling is how these enormous stones were transported and erected without modern machinery. Experimental archaeologists have demonstrated possible methods using rollers, sledges, and human power, but the precision with which the stones were placed remains difficult to explain fully. British megalithic culture appears to have possessed a standardized unit of measurement, the megalithic yard, that recurs in structures across vast distances, suggesting a shared mathematical knowledge that persisted for thousands of years without a formal writing system. This standardization implies a level of cultural coordination across time and space that challenges conventional views of prehistoric societies as isolated and simple. Ancient British sites also display acoustic properties that seem deliberately engineered, with certain chambers amplifying or focusing sound in ways that create unusual auditory experiences. Could these acoustic effects have been part of the structure's purpose, creating environments that altered consciousness during ceremonies or communal gatherings? The people who created these monuments left no written records that have survived, so their purpose remains a subject of ongoing debate. Were they astronomical observatories, ceremonial centers, healing sanctuaries, or something else entirely? The truth likely encompasses multiple functions within a worldview very different from our own. While mainstream archaeology tends to view these structures primarily as ceremonial or status symbols, some researchers point to their precise astronomical alignments and mathematical properties as evidence of a sophisticated scientific tradition that has been largely overlooked. What if these stone circles weren't just symbolic but functional technologies designed to track time and predict celestial events with remarkable accuracy? As modern Britain built over and around these ancient sites, incorporating them into later cultural landscapes, much of their original context was lost. Yet they continue to exert a powerful fascination, drawing visitors who sense something profound in their careful arrangements of stone and earth, something that speaks across millennia of human ingenuity and cosmic awareness. Let the weight of these ancient stones press you deeper into restful contemplation as we journey eastward, across the European continent to the Mediterranean world, where another civilization created wonders that continue to influence our world today. Feel yourself floating above crystal blue waters toward islands where myth and history intertwine. The Minoan civilization of ancient Crete flourished from approximately 2700 to 1420 BCE, creating a sophisticated maritime culture centered around elaborate palace complexes. At Knossos, their largest city, multi-story buildings featured advanced engineering, including indoor plumbing, complex drainage systems, and architectural elements like light wells and air shafts that wouldn't become common again until modern times. The Minoans created an early form of concrete, built paved roads, and engineered harbor installations that facilitated their extensive trading network across the Mediterranean. Their palaces were constructed with sophisticated knowledge of engineering principles, including elements designed to withstand the frequent earthquakes that affected the region. What's particularly notable about Minoan civilization is its apparent peacefulness. Their art depicts few scenes of warfare, their cities lack defensive walls, and their culture seems to have emphasized commerce and artistic expression rather than military conquest. Some researchers interpret the evidence to suggest a society with greater gender equality than contemporary civilizations, with women portrayed prominently in artistic and possibly religious roles. The famous marine-style pottery of the Minoans depicts octopuses and other sea creatures with a naturalistic accuracy that suggests intimate knowledge of marine biology, likely gained through their seafaring activities. Their ships, as depicted in frescoes and models, appear to have been sophisticated vessels capable of long-distance Mediterranean travel. Then, around 1600 BCE, a massive volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera, modern Santorini, appears to have triggered the beginning of Minoan decline. The eruption, one of the largest in human history, sent tsunamis crashing into Cretan coastal settlements and blanketed the region in ash, disrupting agriculture and trade networks. Some scholars believe this catastrophic event may have inspired the legend of Atlantis that Plato recorded centuries later, a tale of an advanced island civilization suddenly swallowed by the sea. The timing, location, and description of Atlantis share certain similarities with what we know of Minoan Crete and the Thera eruption. The Minoan writing system, known as Linear A, remains undeciphered, leaving much of their culture shrouded in mystery. What knowledge might be locked in these untranslated texts? What understanding of their world might we gain if we could read their own words rather than interpreting through the limited lens of physical remains? After the Thera eruption, Minoan civilization appears to have been gradually absorbed by the rising Mycenaean culture from mainland Greece, with their palaces eventually abandoned and their distinctive cultural elements fading from history. Yet elements of their artistic styles, architectural knowledge, and religious symbolism appear to have influenced later Greek civilization in subtle but important ways. What makes the Minoans particularly intriguing is how their sophisticated, apparently peaceful culture achieved such remarkable developments in isolation, on an island with limited resources. Their achievements suggest a social organization and knowledge base that challenges our understanding of Bronze Age capabilities. Recent archaeological discoveries continue to expand our understanding of Minoan achievements, including evidence of sophisticated astronomical knowledge encoded in the orientation of their palaces and religious sites. The palace at Knossos appears aligned to capture specific celestial events, suggesting an integration of astronomical awareness into their architecture and possibly their religious practices. As the gentle Mediterranean waves lap at ancient harbor stones, imagine the busy ports of Minoan Crete, where ships arrived laden with goods from Egypt, the Levant, and beyond, creating networks of trade and cultural exchange that spanned the known world of their time. What ideas and knowledge traveled along these maritime routes? What ancient wisdom was shared in now silent marketplaces? Let the rhythmic sound of waves carry you eastward again, across azure waters to the lands where some of history's most powerful empires rose and fell, leaving magnificent ruins scattered across landscapes steeped in time. Feel the warmth of desert air as we approach the remains of civilizations that shaped the course of human history. In Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Sumerians created one of the world's earliest complex civilizations around 4500 BCE, developing writing, sophisticated mathematics, and monumental architecture that influenced all subsequent cultures in the region. Their cuneiform texts speak of kings who ruled for impossibly long periods, and of gods called the Anunnaki, who came from the heavens to bring knowledge and civilization to humanity. The famous Epic of Gilgamesh and other Sumerian texts describe a great flood that nearly destroyed humanity, paralleling flood myths found in cultures worldwide, and possibly preserving memory of actual catastrophic events at the end of the last ice age. Sumerian astronomical knowledge was remarkably advanced, with clay tablets recording observations of planets and stars with surprising accuracy. Their mathematical system, based on the number 60, gave us our modern divisions of hours, minutes, and seconds, as well as the 360 degrees in a circle. This sexagesimal system allows for precise fractions and calculations that would have facilitated their sophisticated understanding of astronomy and engineering. What's particularly puzzling about Sumerian civilization is its apparently sudden emergence with key elements like writing, urban planning, and complex mathematics already well developed. The archaeological record shows limited evidence of the gradual development we would expect to see preceding such achievements, leading some researchers to question conventional explanations. The Sumerians themselves claim their knowledge came directly from the Anunnaki, beings they described as coming from a planet called Nibiru in their texts. While mainstream archaeology interprets these accounts as mythological, the specific and detailed nature of some Sumerian astronomical knowledge raises questions about how they acquired such accurate information without modern observational tools. Later Mesopotamian civilizations built upon Sumerian foundations, creating powerful empires centered around magnificent cities like Babylon and Nineveh. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, if they existed as described in ancient texts, would have required sophisticated engineering knowledge to create an artificial ecosystem, including complex hydraulic systems, to irrigate plants on multiple levels. The famous ziggurat temples of Mesopotamia served as both religious centers and possibly astronomical observatories, their step designs creating platforms from which priests could observe celestial movements unobstructed by city buildings. These massive structures, built of mud brick and faced with glazed tiles, dominated ancient cityscapes and served as visual reminders of the connection between earthly and divine realms. Babylonian astronomical texts show a level of mathematical sophistication that wasn't matched in Europe until the Renaissance, with accurate predictions of planetary positions using abstract mathematical concepts that anticipate aspects of calculus. Their understanding of celestial cycles was so precise that modern astronomers have used Babylonian observations to correct current calculations of long-term lunar and planetary movements. The Library of Ashurbanipal, established in the 7th century BCE in Nineveh, contained tens of thousands of clay tablets, covering subjects from medicine and astronomy to literature and religious practices. Though partially destroyed when the city fell, the surviving texts provide glimpses of a knowledge tradition far more sophisticated than commonly portrayed in popular accounts of ancient history. Mesopotamian medical texts describe surgical procedures, anatomical knowledge, and pharmacological treatments that show a surprisingly advanced understanding of human physiology for their time. While some practices were embedded in magical thinking, others display observation-based approaches that anticipate aspects of modern medicine. As empires rose and fell in the Fertile Crescent, knowledge was preserved, adapted, and transmitted across cultural boundaries, creating continuity in certain traditions, even as political structures changed dramatically. This transmission of knowledge extended westward into the Mediterranean world and eastward toward the Indus Valley, creating networks of intellectual exchange that shaped the ancient world. Let your mind drift now toward the east, to the banks of another great river, where one of history's most remarkable civilizations created monuments of such precision and scale that they continue to astonish visitors today. Feel the desert heat giving way to the life-giving humidity of the Nile Valley as we return to explore deeper mysteries of ancient Egypt. Beyond the famous pyramids and temples that draw tourists from around the world, Egypt contains less visited sites that suggest capabilities and knowledge even more remarkable than commonly acknowledged. At Abydos, the Osirian temple features massive granite blocks weighing up to 100 tons, precision cut and fitted together with such exactitude that modern tools would struggle to replicate the work. The famous Dendera light bulb reliefs in the Temple of Hathor appear to depict what some interpret as electrical lighting devices, with structures resembling bulbs, filaments, and power sources. While mainstream Egyptology interprets these as symbolic representations of lotus flowers and mythological elements, the resemblance to electrical technology is striking enough to have generated decades of alternative theories. In the same temple, ceiling representations of the zodiac display astronomical knowledge that includes awareness of the precession of the equinoxes, the 26,000-year cycle that slowly shifts the apparent position of stars as viewed from Earth. This phenomenon wasn't discovered by modern astronomy until much later, raising questions about how ancient Egyptians acquired this knowledge. At Abu Simbel, the main temple was constructed so precisely that twice a year, on February 22nd and October 22nd, the rising sun penetrates the entire length of the temple to illuminate statues of gods seated in the sanctuary, except for Ptah, the god of darkness, who remains in shadow. This feat of astronomical engineering required precise calculations and planning that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of solar positioning. The Great Pyramid's dimensions encode mathematical constants, like pi and the golden ratio, with an accuracy that seems beyond coincidental, suggesting its designers possessed advanced mathematical knowledge. Its positioning on the Giza Plateau appears to precisely model the arrangement of stars in the Orion constellation, as they appeared around 10,500 BCE, far earlier than conventional dating places. Egyptian civilization. Recent acoustic research has revealed that many Egyptian chambers and passages produce specific sound frequencies when activated by voice or instrument, creating effects that may have been intentionally engineered into these structures. Could these acoustic properties have served some ritualistic or practical purpose we don't yet understand? The mysterious Edfu building texts, preserved in the Temple of Horus, describe an age before the dynastic period, when Egypt was ruled by the Sheptiu, beings who came from the stars, and established the foundation of Egyptian civilization. These texts speak of a time of chaos and great floods, followed by a rebuilding of society under the guidance of these godlike beings. Egyptian hieroglyphic texts themselves represent a sophisticated system that combines phonetic elements with ideographic and determinative symbols, allowing for complex and nuanced communication. The sudden appearance of this fully developed writing system in the archaeological record, without clear developmental precursors, remains one of Egyptology's puzzling questions. Medical papyri from ancient Egypt describe surgical procedures, anatomical knowledge, and treatments that demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of the human body. The Edwin Smith Surgical Papyrus, dating to around 1600 BCE, contains descriptions of brain injuries and spinal trauma that show remarkably accurate anatomical observations for its time. Underground chambers beneath the Serapeum of Saqqara housed enormous granite boxes weighing up to 70 tons each, cut with such precision that their corners form perfect right angles and their surfaces are machined flat to within modern engineering tolerances. The purpose of these massive stone containers remains debated, with theories ranging from bull burials to acoustic resonance chambers. As the sands continue to shift across the Egyptian desert, new discoveries regularly challenge established timelines and capabilities. Recent excavations have uncovered evidence of sophisticated urban planning, waterworks, and industrial-scale production that suggest organizational capabilities far beyond what's typically attributed to ancient societies. Let the timeless flow of the Nile carry you eastward once more, across desert landscapes toward the Indus Valley, where another ancient civilization created urban centers with advanced planning and engineering that rivaled anything in the contemporary world. Feel the changing landscape as fertile river valleys give way to the foothills of mighty mountain ranges. The Indus Valley civilization, also known as the Harappan culture, flourished between approximately 3,300 and 1300 BCE across parts of modern-day Pakistan and India, creating some of the ancient world's most sophisticated urban centers. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa featured grid-patterned streets, multi-story buildings, covered drainage systems, and public baths that suggest remarkably advanced civil engineering. What's particularly impressive about Harappan cities is their standardization. Street widths, brick sizes, and building layouts followed consistent patterns across settlements separated by hundreds of miles, implying a level of centralized planning and shared knowledge that spanned vast distances. Their drainage and water management systems were so sophisticated that some aspects weren't matched again until Roman times, thousands of years later. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro, a watertight reservoir measuring approximately 12 by 7 meters and 2.4 meters deep, was lined with carefully fitted bricks and sealed with bitumen to prevent leakage. The structure included sophisticated water management features, like channels, drains, and what appears to be a system for heating water, suggesting not just engineering skill, but organized social practices around bathing and possibly ritual purification. Harappan cities featured covered drainage channels running beneath the streets, connected to individual homes through chutes and pipes that carried waste away from living areas, a public health innovation that many later civilizations lacked. The careful engineering of these systems, with precisely calculated slopes to maintain water flow, demonstrates sophisticated mathematical and engineering knowledge. The Indus script, found on thousands of small stone seals and pottery fragments, remains undeciphered despite decades of scholarly effort. These symbols, numbering around 400 distinct signs, appear to represent a writing system whose meaning has been lost with the decline of the civilization that created it. What knowledge might be locked in these unreadable texts? What understanding of their world might we gain if we could decipher their written language? Most intriguingly, the Indus Valley civilization appears to have been largely peaceful. Archaeological excavations have found few weapons or evidence of warfare, no obvious palaces or royal tombs, and city layouts that suggest more egalitarian social organization than contemporary civilizations in Egypt and Mesopotamia. This apparent focus on commerce, craftsmanship, and urban planning, rather than military conquest, represents a different model of ancient development than we typically envision. Their craftsmanship included remarkably precise stone carving, standardized weights and measures that maintained accuracy to within 0.05 grams across vast distances, and sophisticated metallurgy that produced copper and bronze tools of consistent quality. The famous dancing girl bronze figurine demonstrates their mastery of the lost wax casting technique, creating a sculpture whose dynamic pose captures movement in a way that feels surprisingly modern. Mysterious structures at Mohenjo-daro that some archaeologists interpret as granaries feature sophisticated ventilation systems that would have helped preserve stored grains in the region's humid climate. The careful engineering of these buildings suggests advanced understanding of airflow, moisture control, and food preservation techniques. Then around 1900 BCE, this sophisticated civilization began a slow decline for reasons that remain debated. Climate change affecting river patterns, environmental degradation, disease, and external pressures all feature in various explanations, but the complete picture remains elusive. The precise nature of their disappearance, whether sudden abandonment or gradual migration, continues to be investigated through ongoing archaeological work. Recent satellite and aerial surveys have identified over 1,400 Harappan settlements, many still unexcavated, suggesting a much larger and more connected civilization than previously recognized. The density of these settlements and evidence of extensive trade networks challenges conventional views of ancient urban development and economic organization. What's particularly puzzling about the Indus Valley civilization is how such sophisticated urban planning and engineering developed in apparent isolation without clear evidence of the gradual evolution we would expect to see in the archaeological record. Like other ancient cultures we've explored, the seemingly sudden appearance of their advanced capabilities raises questions about conventional developmental timelines. Let the flowing waters of the ancient Indus guide you now across the vast Asian continent, toward civilizations that developed unique philosophical traditions and technological innovations that would eventually spread throughout the world. Feel yourself floating eastward, across mountain ranges and vast plateaus toward the cradle of Chinese civilization. Ancient China developed independently from Western civilizations, creating unique approaches to writing, technology, philosophy, and governance that would shape East Asian cultures for millennia. By the time of the Shang dynasty, approximately 1600 to 1046 BCE, they had already developed sophisticated bronze casting techniques, producing ritual vessels of remarkable complexity and artistic refinement. Chinese astronomical knowledge was remarkably advanced, with records of astronomical observations dating back to at least 1400 BCE. The Chinese recorded supernovas, comets, and solar eclipses with precision, creating a continuous astronomical record spanning thousands of years. Their observations were so accurate that modern astronomers have used Chinese records to track celestial events backward through time. The famous Chinese seismoscope, invented by Zhang Heng in 132 CE, could detect earthquakes hundreds of miles away and even indicate their direction, a technological achievement that wouldn't be matched in the West until the modern era. This sophisticated device used principles of inertia and careful engineering to create an early warning system for a natural phenomenon that Chinese philosophers recognized followed patterns that could be observed and predicted. The world's first known paper money, movable type printing, gunpowder, the compass, and countless other innovations originated in China, often centuries before similar technologies appeared in the West. The sophistication of early Chinese mechanical engineering is demonstrated by artifacts like the south-pointing chariot, a device that maintained its orientation regardless of the vehicle's turns through a differential gear mechanism. The famous terracotta army of the first Emperor Qin Shi Huang, with its thousands of individually crafted soldiers, demonstrates not just artistic skill, but the organizational capacity to coordinate such a massive project. Recent scientific analysis has revealed that the bronze weapons carried by these clay warriors were treated with an anti-rust chromium coating, a technique that wouldn't be invented in the West until the 20th century. Chinese medicinal traditions developed sophisticated understanding of human physiology and pharmacology, identifying the circulation of blood long before William Harvey's discovery in Europe, and developing acupuncture systems based on detailed mapping of the body's energy pathways. Their pharmacopoeia documented thousands of natural substances and their medicinal properties, creating treatments that modern science is only beginning to validate through clinical research. Ancient Chinese texts speak of legendary rulers from a distant past who brought civilization, agriculture, writing, and medicine to humanity. Figures like Fu Xi, Shennong, and the Yellow Emperor are described as teaching humans the arts of civilization in a time so remote it predates written history. Could these accounts preserve memories of actual historical figures whose contributions shaped the foundations of Chinese culture? The philosophy of Taoism developed sophisticated understanding of natural principles, viewing the universe as a balanced system of complementary forces that could be observed and harmonized with rather than dominated. This perspective led to technological and medical approaches fundamentally different from Western traditions, based on working with natural patterns rather than imposing external control. Chinese silk production, which began at least 5,000 years ago, involved sophisticated understanding of sericulture, textile production, and chemistry for dyeing and treatment. The techniques were so valuable that they remain a closely guarded secret for millennia, with silk becoming one of the most precious trade goods of the ancient world, giving its name to the famous network of routes connecting east and west. The Chinese practice of feng shui developed precise methods for orienting buildings and cities in harmony with natural energy flows, creating living environments designed to balance human activities with cosmic forces. While often dismissed as superstition by Western observers, Feng Shui incorporates sophisticated understanding of local geography, seasonal patterns, and psychological effects of environmental design. As dynasties rose and fell across millennia of Chinese history, certain knowledge traditions maintained remarkable continuity, preserved through imperial academies, family lineages, and written texts. This cultural continuity allowed for the accumulation and refinement of knowledge over timescales far longer than typically seen in Western civilizations, which experienced more dramatic ruptures between ancient, medieval, and modern periods. Let the flowing streams of ancient wisdom carry you southward now, to the lush valleys and coastal plains of Southeast Asia, where sophisticated kingdoms created architectural wonders that continue to astonish visitors today. Feel the increasing humidity as jungle landscapes replace the northern plains, bringing us to monuments that seem to bridge earth and heaven. At Angkor in Cambodia, the Khmer civilization created the largest religious complex in the world, centered around temples of such scale and intricate design that they've been compared to the pyramids of Egypt in their architectural significance. Angkor Wat, the most famous of these structures, combines precise astronomical alignments with stunning artistic details across a massive complex covering over 400 acres. The builders of Angkor created an elaborate water management system, including reservoirs, canals, and carefully engineered water flow that sustained a population of up to 1 million people, making Angkor one of the ancient world's largest urban centers. Recent archaeological surveys using LiDAR technology have revealed the full extent of this hydraulic system, showing a level of landscape modification far beyond what was previously recognized. What's particularly impressive about Angkor Wat is its astronomical alignment. The temple is oriented to the rising sun of the spring equinox, while specific features track other celestial events through careful positioning of windows, doorways, and architectural elements. These alignments suggest sophisticated astronomical knowledge, integrated with religious and political symbolism in a unified cosmic vision. The precision of Angkor's construction is remarkable, even by modern standards, with massive stone blocks fitted together with such exactitude that the joints are barely visible. The engineers who designed these structures clearly possessed advanced understanding of weight distribution, structural integrity, and the properties of different stone types used throughout the complex. Carved reliefs covering acres of wall space at Angkor depict not just religious scenes but detailed representations of everyday life, historical events, and astronomical knowledge. These carvings serve as a vast visual encyclopedia of Khmer civilization, preserving information about everything from clothing styles and agricultural practices to military campaigns and cosmological beliefs. Like many ancient sites we've explored, Angkor was eventually abandoned, its magnificent temples reclaimed by the surrounding jungle until their rediscovery by Western explorers in the 19th century. The conventional explanation involves climate change, water management issues, and warfare, but questions remain about how such a sophisticated urban center could be completely abandoned. Further east, on the Indonesian island of Java, the magnificent Buddhist monument of Borobudur represents another architectural achievement of astonishing scale and complexity. Built around the 9th century CE, this massive stepped pyramid contains over 2 million stone blocks arranged in 9 platforms that symbolize the Buddhist cosmology. Borobudur functions as both temple and teaching tool, with over 2,500 relief panels and 504 Buddha statues, creating a three-dimensional textbook of Buddhist philosophy that pilgrims would experience by walking through the structure in a specific pattern. The mathematical precision of its layout and the sophisticated symbolic program encoded in its design demonstrate remarkable integration of architectural, religious, and educational purposes. What makes Borobudur particularly intriguing is its sophisticated understanding of natural forces. The structure was designed with elaborate drainage systems that have helped it survive in a rainy tropical climate for over 1,000 years. The engineering knowledge required to create such a massive yet durable monument in challenging environmental conditions suggests capabilities far beyond what's typically attributed to pre-modern builders. Both Angkor and Borobudur demonstrate how Southeast Asian civilizations developed sophisticated architectural and engineering traditions distinct from but comparable to those of better-known ancient cultures. Their achievements challenge Eurocentric narratives of historical development and remind us that remarkable innovations occurred independently across the ancient world. Recent archaeological work throughout Southeast Asia has revealed evidence of sophisticated bronze working traditions, extensive trade networks, and complex social organizations dating back thousands of years earlier than previously recognized. Maritime trade routes connected these civilizations with China, India, and even distant Mediterranean cultures, creating networks of exchange that facilitated not just commerce but the spread of ideas, technologies, and beliefs. As the tropical rain patters gently on ancient stone, imagine these magnificent temples in their prime, centers of thriving civilizations, where knowledge of architecture, astronomy, engineering, and art came together in structures designed to reflect the cosmos itself. What wisdom guided their creation? What understanding of natural and spiritual principles informed their precise alignments and symbolic elements? Let the rhythm of falling rain carry you now across vast oceans, to islands scattered across the Pacific where ancient navigators achieved feats of exploration that would not be matched until the modern era. Feel the sea spray on your face as we journey to civilizations that developed in seemingly complete isolation, yet achieved remarkable sophistication. The Polynesian cultures of the Pacific created a maritime tradition that allowed them to navigate thousands of miles of open ocean without instruments, discovering and settling islands scattered across an area larger than all of Europe. Their navigation systems combine detailed observation of stars, clouds, ocean swells, bird flights, and other natural phenomena into a comprehensive method for finding their way across seemingly featureless seas. On Easter Island, Rapa Nui, a small volcanic island in the remote southeastern Pacific, ancient inhabitants created the famous Moai statues, massive stone figures weighing up to 82 tons and standing up to 33 feet tall. How they quarried, carved, and transported these enormous monoliths, using only stone tools, remains a subject of ongoing research and experimentation. Recent studies suggest sophisticated engineering knowledge and how the Moai were designed with shifted centers of gravity that facilitated their transport using a walking, rocking motion controlled by ropes. The precision of this engineering, developed in complete isolation on one of the world's most remote inhabited islands, challenges conventional views of how technological knowledge develops and spreads. Throughout the Pacific, ancient Polynesians created sophisticated agricultural systems adapted to challenging island environments, including elaborate terracing, irrigation networks, and fish pond aquaculture that sustainably supported substantial populations on limited land areas. Their understanding of ecological relationships and resource management allowed them to thrive in environments that might seem marginal by continental standards. Hawaiian Heiau temples demonstrate precise astronomical alignments, similar to those we've seen in other ancient cultures worldwide, suggesting independent development of sophisticated celestial observation techniques. These alignments would have helped time agricultural activities, religious ceremonies, and possibly navigation planning in a culture where accurate understanding of seasonal patterns was essential for survival. Polynesian oral traditions speak of ancestors who came from distant lands following the pathways of stars, led by navigators with special knowledge passed down through carefully maintained lineages. These traditions preserve navigational knowledge, genealogical records, and historical events with remarkable accuracy across generations without written language, challenging Western assumptions about how knowledge is transmitted and preserved. What makes Pacific Island achievements particularly remarkable is their development in isolation, on small islands with limited resources, often separated from other human populations by thousands of miles of ocean. The sophistication of their maritime technology, agricultural systems, and astronomical knowledge demonstrates human ingenuity adapting to and thriving in challenging environments through careful observation and intergenerational learning. Recent archaeological evidence suggests that Polynesian voyagers may have reached the Americas long before European contact, potentially creating trans-Pacific connections that conventional history has overlooked. The presence of sweet potatoes, a South American plant, throughout Polynesia provides botanical evidence for such contact, while genetic studies and linguistic similarities offer additional support for early connections between these distant populations. As the stars wheel overhead in the vast Pacific night, imagine the ancient navigators who used these celestial patterns to find their way across seemingly endless waters, carrying their knowledge, technologies, and cultural traditions to new islands where they would adapt and thrive. What courage and confidence in their navigational systems must they have possessed to set out into the unknown with such certainty? Let the gentle rocking of ocean waves carry you now to our final destination, back to the Americas, where civilizations in the high Andes created engineering wonders that continue to defy conventional explanation. Feel the air growing cooler and thinner as we ascend to mountain citadels, built with such precision they've withstood centuries of earthquakes unscathed. The Inca civilization, centered in what is now Peru, created an empire spanning thousands of miles of mountainous terrain without wheeled vehicles, draft animals, except llamas, which cannot carry heavy loads, iron tools, or a writing system as we would recognize it. Yet they built roads, bridges, agricultural terraces, and stone structures of such engineering sophistication that many remain intact despite centuries of earthquakes in one of the world's most seismically active regions. At sites like Sacsayhuaman near Cusco, massive stone blocks weighing up to 125 tons are fitted together with such precision that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. The complex polygonal shapes of these stones, with some having 12 or more sides that fit perfectly with adjacent blocks, demonstrates mastery of three-dimensional stone cutting that would challenge even modern stonemasons. What makes Incan stonework particularly remarkable is not just the precision of the fitting, but the engineering knowledge it represents. The slightly inward-leaning walls, precisely interlocking stones, and foundations designed to flex slightly during earthquakes create structures with remarkable seismic resistance, an engineering achievement perfectly adapted to the geological realities of the Andes. Incan agricultural terraces represent another sophisticated engineering achievement, with carefully designed layers of stone, gravel, and soil, creating drainage systems that prevented erosion while maximizing arable land in steep mountain environments. These agricultural works expanded the productive capacity of the land while protecting it from the degradation that often accompanies farming in mountainous regions. The famous Incan road system, spanning over 24,000 miles through some of the world's most challenging terrain, included suspension bridges made of woven plant fibers that could support heavy loads across deep canyons. These bridges, rebuilt every year through community effort, represent sophisticated understanding of tensile engineering principles applied with locally available materials. Machu Picchu, perhaps the most famous Incan site, demonstrates sophisticated integration of architecture with natural landscape, including agricultural terraces, astronomically aligned structures, and an elaborate water management system that channeled mountain springs through a series of ritual and practical fountains. The site's buildings feature subtle astronomical alignments that would have tracked solstices, equinoxes, and other celestial events important to Incan calendar systems. The Incas themselves claim relatively recent origins, describing their empire as a new organization of much older Andean cultural traditions. Archaeological evidence confirms this, with sites like Tiwanaku and Pumapunku near Lake Titicaca displaying stonework and engineering that predates the Inca by centuries, yet demonstrates similar or even more advanced technical capabilities. At Pumapunku, precisely cut H-shaped blocks and other architectural elements show machine-like precision, with perfectly straight edges, right angles, and standardized shapes that suggest sophisticated knowledge of geometry and stone-cutting techniques. Some blocks feature small drill holes and precise internal channels, whose purpose remains debated but demonstrates remarkable technical skill in working with extremely hard stone. The Nazca lines in southern Peru represent another Andean mystery, enormous geoglyphs created by removing desert stones to reveal lighter soil beneath, forming figures of animals, plants, and geometric shapes, so large they're only fully visible from the air. Some of these designs stretch more than 1,200 feet across and maintain accurate proportions despite their massive scale, a feat requiring sophisticated understanding of large-scale geometry and planning. What makes the Nazca lines particularly puzzling is their purpose. Why would an ancient culture create artwork visible only from perspectives they presumably couldn't access? Theories range from astronomical calendars to religious procession paths to communication with deities, but their true function remains one of archaeology's enduring questions. Throughout the Andes, ancient cultures demonstrated sophisticated understanding of metallurgy, developing techniques for alloying copper, silver, and gold to create materials with specific properties suited to different applications. Andean metallurgists created a unique form of hammered and annealed copper that approaches the hardness of bronze, demonstrating sophisticated knowledge of how metal properties can be manipulated through specific working techniques. As condors soar above Andean peaks, imagine the ancient engineers who designed these remarkable structures, planning with such precision and working with such skill that their creations would withstand not just the passing of centuries, but the regular seismic activity that has toppled younger buildings. What understanding of materials, forces, and mathematical principles guided their work? What knowledge traditions supported such sophisticated engineering achievements? As our journey through ancient civilizations comes to a close, let's reflect on what these remarkable cultures might tell us about human history and potential. From Egypt to Easter Island, from Angkor to Andean mountaintops, we've explored achievements that continue to inspire wonder and raise questions about conventional historical narratives. Across these diverse cultures, separated by vast distances and seemingly insurmountable barriers to communication, we find surprising commonalities: precise astronomical knowledge, sophisticated mathematics, encoded in architecture, engineering achievements that anticipate modern principles, and origin stories that often attribute foundational knowledge to divine or otherworldly teachers. Conventional archaeology tends to view these similarities as examples of parallel development, different human societies independently discovering similar solutions to universal problems. But some researchers question whether this explanation fully accounts for the precision and sophistication we observe, suggesting possibilities of knowledge diffusion through now forgotten connections, or even earlier global civilizations that influence subsequent cultural developments. What's particularly intriguing is how often these ancient cultures demonstrate capabilities that appear suddenly in the archaeological record, without clear evidence of the gradual development we would expect to see. From Sumerian writing to Egyptian architecture, from Olmec sculpture to Indus urban planning, we find sophisticated traditions appearing already fully formed, raising questions about conventional developmental timelines. Perhaps most humbling is the recognition that these ancient societies often possess knowledge that would be lost and then rediscovered centuries or millennia later. From Greek understanding of atoms to Chinese seismology, from Indian surgical techniques to Polynesian navigation methods, history is filled with examples of sophisticated knowledge that disappeared only to be laboriously reconstructed by later cultures. This pattern challenges progressive views of history that see human development as a steady march from primitive to advanced. Instead, the archaeological record suggests a more complex pattern of rises and falls, with sophisticated knowledge sometimes developing, sometimes being lost, and sometimes being preserved in unexpected ways through dark ages and cultural transitions. As you drift towards sleep, consider that the conventional history we've been taught may represent just fragments of a much richer and more complex human story. What if our understanding of the past is limited not just by what has been lost to time, but by our own assumptions about what was possible in earlier eras? The megalithic structures that dot our planet, from Göbekli Tepe to the Great Pyramid, from Sacsayhuaman to Borobudur, stand as enduring monuments to human ingenuity and as challenges to our understanding of our own past. They invite us to approach ancient cultures not with condescension about their primitive nature, but with humility about what they may have understood that we are only beginning to rediscover. Let these ancient mysteries carry you into the realm of dreams, where perhaps some echo of humanity's forgotten wisdom might speak through the language of symbols and archetypes that connect us across time to our ancestors. What dreams might come when we contemplate the true depth and breadth of human history? What whispers from the ancient past might find their way into our sleeping minds? Tomorrow, you'll awaken refreshed and perhaps carrying some small fragment of insight from this journey through time. But for now, let yourself sink deeper into restful sleep, cradled in the knowledge that you're part of a human story, far richer, more complex, and more fascinating than conventional histories have led us to believe. The monuments and mysteries we've explored tonight will still be waiting, their stones warm in the sun or cool under starlight, their secrets preserved for those curious enough to look beyond conventional explanations and ask the deeper questions. What did our ancestors know? How did they achieve such remarkable feats? What wisdom might they have possessed that we have yet to rediscover? As your consciousness drifts towards sleep, imagine those ancient stargazers who carefully align their monuments to celestial events, the engineers who fitted massive stones with impossible precision, the navigators who crossed vast oceans guided only by their understanding of natural patterns. They too looked up at the same stars we see today, contemplated the same human questions, and sought to encode their understanding in works that would outlast their individual lives. In that contemplation of the stars, in that desire to create something enduring, in that quest to understand our place in the cosmos, we find a connection that spans thousands of years and links us directly to those ancient minds. Despite the vast differences in technology and culture, something essential about being human remains unchanged across millennia. Sleep now and let the wisdom of the ancients flow through your dreams, like the Nile, like the Ganges, like the thousand rivers that have nourished civilizations since time immemorial. Tomorrow is another day to explore, to question, to wonder at the magnificent story of human achievement that stretches back far beyond written history into the misty realms where archaeology and mythology intertwine. Good night, fellow explorer of ancient mysteries. May your dreams be filled with pyramid builders and star navigators, with megalith movers and cosmic mathematicians, all those ancestors whose achievements still challenge our understanding and inspire our imagination across the vast river of time that connects their world to ours. But wait, our journey through the ancient world isn't complete yet. There are still so many forgotten kingdoms and mysterious monuments waiting for us to explore their secrets. Let your mind continue floating through the mists of time as we discover even more remarkable civilizations that have shaped our human story. Let's travel now to the rose-red city of Petra, carved directly into sandstone cliffs by the ancient Nabateans over 2,000 years ago. Hidden in a mountain basin in what is now Jordan, this remarkable city remained unknown to the Western world until 1812, when a Swiss explorer disguised as a Bedouin was led through the narrow Sick, a winding canyon pathway that suddenly opens to reveal the magnificent treasury facade standing over 130 feet tall. The Nabateans weren't just master stone carvers, but brilliant hydrological engineers who transformed an arid landscape into a thriving commercial center through sophisticated water management systems. Their elaborate network of dams, cisterns, and water channels captured every precious drop of rainfall and directed it to where it was needed most, allowing a population of up to 30,000 people to thrive in the desert. The engineering was so effective that Petra withstood flash floods that would have devastated other cities, with channels designed to divert sudden water surges around rather than through the city center. These water systems included ceramic pipes under pressure, sedimentation tanks, and even mechanisms to maintain specific flow rates, technologies that wouldn't be matched in Europe until centuries later. What's particularly fascinating about Nabatean water engineering is how they integrated it invisibly into the landscape, working with natural contours and materials in ways that maintain both functionality and beauty. Petra's famous facades, with their columns, pediments, and sculpted figures, aren't merely decorative, but represent sophisticated understanding of structural engineering, with precise calculations ensuring these rock-cut structures would remain stable for millennia. The city's location at the intersection of major trade routes between Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean made it enormously wealthy, with Nabatean merchants controlling valuable commerce in incense, spices, silk, and other luxury goods. Yet despite their prominence, much about Nabatean culture remains mysterious. Their language is only partially understood, their religious practices obscure, and their sudden decline and absorption into the Roman Empire raises questions about what knowledge might have been lost in this cultural transition. As the desert winds whisper through Petra's empty corridors and grand facades, imagine the bustling marketplace it once was, with traders from across the known world exchanging not just goods but ideas, technologies, and beliefs that would shape civilizations near and far. Let the warm desert air carry you now across the Mediterranean to the Italian peninsula, where before the rise of Rome, another sophisticated civilization flourished, the mysterious Etruscans. From approximately the 8th to 3rd centuries BCE, Etruscan culture dominated central Italy with advanced metallurgical skills, sophisticated art, and engineering capabilities that would later influence Roman achievements. Their cities featured urban planning with grid-patterned streets, sophisticated drainage systems, and monumental architecture that demonstrated advanced understanding of construction principles. Etruscan metalworking was so refined that their bronze mirrors and jewelry are considered among the finest artistic achievements of the ancient world, displaying technical mastery that suggests generations of accumulated knowledge. Their religious practices involved elaborate divination through reading natural phenomena, from lightning patterns to the arrangement of internal organs in sacrificial animals, implying a systematic approach to observing and interpreting the natural world that merged spiritual beliefs with proto-scientific observation. What makes the Etruscans particularly intriguing is how thoroughly their independent culture was absorbed and obscured by later Roman dominance, leaving modern scholars with tantalizing fragments of a civilization whose full story remains untold. Their language, preserved in thousands of inscriptions, remains only partially deciphered, with its linguistic origins still debated and its literature almost entirely lost. The elaborate tomb paintings that survive provide glimpses of a vibrant culture with distinctive views on life, death, and the afterlife, including unusually prominent roles for women compared to other Mediterranean societies of the time. Etruscan cosmology appears to have viewed the world as governed by numerical principles and cyclical patterns, with specific numbers having sacred significance in ways that would later influence Pythagorean thought. Their knowledge of astronomy is evident in artifacts like the liver of Piacenza, a bronze model of a sheep's liver divided into sections corresponding to celestial regions, suggesting a system that connected biological forms with cosmic patterns in a unified worldview. As olive trees rustle in the Italian breeze, imagine these sophisticated predecessors to Roman glory, whose knowledge and innovations would be incorporated into the empire that conquered them, yet whose distinctive voice and perspective would be largely lost to history. What wisdom might have been preserved in Etruscan texts that didn't survive? What understanding of natural principles might they have possessed that we are only beginning to rediscover? Now let the currents of history carry you southward, across the Mediterranean Sea to the northern edge of Africa, where the kingdom of ancient Carthage once rivaled Rome for dominance of the western Mediterranean. Founded by Phoenician settlers from the eastern Mediterranean around 814 BCE, Carthage grew into a maritime trading empire with outposts stretching from modern-day Spain to the coastlines of North Africa. Carthaginian ships ventured beyond the Strait of Gibraltar into the Atlantic, possibly reaching as far as the Canary Islands and the British Isles, and some controversial interpretations of ancient texts suggest they may have even reached the Americas long before Columbus. Their shipbuilding technology was so advanced that Romans captured Carthaginian vessels to reverse engineer and improve their own naval designs. The famous Carthaginian general Hannibal, who crossed the Alps with war elephants to invade Italy, demonstrated not just military genius, but sophisticated logistical planning and engineering capabilities in moving such a large force through seemingly impassable mountain terrain. Archaeological evidence suggests Carthage was a carefully planned city with grid-patterned streets, sophisticated harbors with specialized docks for different types of vessels, and advanced water management systems including covered sewers and public baths. What makes Carthage particularly tragic in historical terms is how thoroughly it was destroyed by the Romans following the Third Punic War in 146 BCE, with the city reportedly burned for 17 days, and the ground sown with salt, to symbolize its complete eradication. This deliberate destruction means that much of what we know about Carthaginian culture comes from Roman sources, their enemies, creating a potentially distorted picture of this sophisticated civilization. The Carthaginians were particularly known for their worship of Baal, Hammon, and Tanit, deities whose rituals and significance have been subject to much speculation and controversy, including debates about alleged child sacrifice that may represent Roman propaganda rather than historical reality. The Carthaginians spoke and wrote in the Phoenician language, using an alphabetic script that would influence the development of numerous other writing systems, including Greek and ultimately Latin, the alphabet you're reading right now. Their commercial reach was so extensive that Carthaginian coins have been found throughout the Mediterranean world and beyond, demonstrating the far-reaching networks of trade and communication they established across vast distances. As Mediterranean waves lap against North African shores, imagine this maritime civilization whose ships connected distant cultures, whose traders exchanged not just goods but knowledge across thousands of miles, and whose complete story remains partially obscured by the historical accident of having lost the war that would determine who wrote the history. What navigational knowledge might Carthaginian sailors have possessed? What astronomical observations guided their voyages into uncharted waters? Let the ocean currents carry you now across the vast Atlantic to the shores of South America, where one of the most fascinating pre-Columbian civilizations developed sophisticated technologies and social structures high in the Andean mountains. The Chimú culture, which flourished from about 900 to 1470 CE, before being conquered by the Incas, created the vast adobe city of Chan on the northern Peruvian coast, the largest pre-Columbian city in South America and the largest adobe city in the world. Chan was a meticulously planned urban center covering nearly 20 square kilometers, with distinct sectors for different social classes and specialized economic activities. Its sophisticated hydraulic engineering included wells that tapped into groundwater, canals that transported water from rivers over 50 miles away, and agricultural systems that transformed desert into productive farmland. The Chimú created intricate metalwork in gold, silver, and copper alloys, developing techniques like depletion gilding, removing copper from an alloy's surface to create the appearance of solid gold that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of metallurgical principles. What makes the Chimú particularly interesting is how they adapted to one of the world's driest coastal deserts, creating sustainable agricultural systems through careful water management and understanding of local environmental conditions. Their engineers built massive irrigation works that connected multiple river valleys into a unified system, demonstrating landscape-scale planning that allowed their civilization to thrive in an environment that might seem hostile to large-scale human settlement. The Chimu rulers lived in vast compounds called ciudadelas, walled palace complexes containing living quarters, administrative areas, temples, and water reservoirs, some covering over 200,000 square feet. These structures were decorated with elaborate friezes depicting marine life, reflecting the culture's strong connection to the ocean and its resources. Despite lacking a formal writing system as we would recognize it, the Chimu maintained records using quipus, knotted cord systems that could encode complex information about resources, population, and administrative matters in a three-dimensional tactile format. As Pacific waves crash against South American shores, imagine this sophisticated coastal civilization that transformed desert into productive landscape through careful observation and engineering, whose artisans created works of such beauty and technical sophistication that they were specifically targeted for looting when the Inca conquered them. What knowledge of local ecosystems informed their agricultural systems? What understanding of materials, science guided their metallurgical achievements? Let the Pacific currents guide you now across vast ocean expanses to the shores of Japan, where the ancient Jomon culture developed some of the world's earliest pottery and created complex hunter-gatherer societies that challenge conventional views of how human civilization developed. Flourishing from approximately 14,500 to 300 BCE, the Jomon people created sophisticated ceramic vessels thousands of years before agriculture became their primary food source, contradicting traditional models that place pottery development after agricultural settlement. The intricate rope pattern decorations that give the culture its name, Jomon means cord-marked, demonstrate sophisticated aesthetic sensibilities and technical skill in working with clay, creating vessels of remarkable artistic expression. Some Jomon pottery appears designed for specialized purposes, including ceremonial use, food preparation, and storage, suggesting a complex material culture adapted to specific environmental and social needs. Archaeological evidence indicates they lived in semi-permanent settlements with substantial pit-house dwellings clustered in small villages, practicing a stable hunter-gatherer lifestyle based on the rich natural resources of the Japanese archipelago. What makes the Jomon particularly significant for understanding human cultural evolution is how they developed complex social structures, artistic traditions, and technological innovations, while maintaining a primarily hunter-gatherer lifestyle, challenging the conventional narrative that such developments required agricultural settlement. Recent research suggests they practiced small-scale cultivation of plants alongside hunting and gathering, creating a mixed subsistence strategy that remained stable for thousands of years, without transitioning to full-scale agriculture as occurred in many other regions. The remarkable stability of Jomon culture, persisting with consistent patterns for over 10,000 years, represents one of the longest continuous cultural traditions in human history, suggesting they achieved a sustainable relationship with their environment that didn't require constant innovation or expansion. Their elaborate clay figurines, called dogo, often depicting female forms with exaggerated features, suggest sophisticated symbolic thinking and possibly religious practices centered around fertility and natural cycles. As gentle rains nourished the Japanese islands, imagine this ancient culture whose relationship with their environment allowed them to thrive for millennia without dramatically transforming the landscape, whose artistic expressions demonstrate deep connection to natural patterns, and whose very existence challenges our assumptions about the necessary conditions for human cultural development. What wisdom might they have possessed about sustainable living that our resource-intensive civilizations have forgotten? Let eastern winds carry you now across the Asian continent to the western edge of the Eurasian steppe, where the ancient Scythians created a nomadic civilization of remarkable sophistication between the 9th and 2nd centuries BCE. These horse-riding peoples dominated vast territories from the Black Sea to Central Asia, creating an alternative model of civilization not based on cities and agriculture, but on mobile pastoralism and strategic control of trade routes. Despite lacking permanent settlements, the Scythians developed highly sophisticated craftsmanship, particularly in goldwork and other metallurgy, creating artifacts of such artistic quality and technical mastery that they continue to astonish modern viewers. The frozen tombs of Scythian nobility, preserved in the permafrost of the Altai Mountains, have yielded textiles, leatherwork, and wooden objects rarely preserved from the ancient world, revealing a material culture of remarkable richness and sophistication. Their distinctive animal-style art, featuring dynamic representations of real and mythological creatures and twisted compressed compositions, influenced artistic traditions across vast distances and continues to inspire artists today. Archaeological evidence suggests Scythian warriors included women who rode, hunted, and fought alongside men, possibly inspiring Greek legends of Amazons and challenging conventional gender roles in ancient societies. What makes the Scythians particularly interesting is how they maintained cultural cohesion and technological sophistication without the urban centers that we typically associate with advanced civilizations. Their mastery of horseback riding, they were among the first to use saddles and trousers for riding, gave them military advantages that allowed them to dominate settled agricultural societies across huge territories. Herodotus described their use of cannabis and ceremonial steam baths, an observation confirmed by archaeological evidence of cannabis seeds and smoking equipment found in Scythian tombs. The Scythians developed highly effective composite bows made of layers of wood, horn, and sinew that could shoot with remarkable power and accuracy from horseback, centuries before similar technology appeared in other regions. Their clothing, well preserved in frozen tombs, show sophisticated tailoring techniques, including fitted garments with set-in sleeves, decorative applique, and elaborately embroidered designs that would not be out of place in modern fashion. Despite being primarily known through their burials and through the writings of settled peoples who often feared them, the archaeological evidence suggests a complex society with specialized craftspeople, elaborate religious practices, and extensive trade networks. As winds sweep across the vast Eurasian grasslands, imagine these skilled riders whose mobile lifestyle created a different path to cultural sophistication, whose technologies were adapted to the specific challenges of steppe environments, and whose influence shaped the development of cultures across two continents. What knowledge of animal behavior informed their mastery of horsemanship? What understanding of materials, science guided their creation of composite bows and weatherproof clothing adapted to extreme environments? Now let the desert winds guide you across Central Asia to the ancient city of Merv, in what is now Turkmenistan, once one of the largest and most important cities in the world during the 11th and 12th centuries CE. Located at a critical junction on the Silk Road trading network, Merv grew into a metropolis spanning over 1,000 hectares with sophisticated urban planning, monumental architecture, and advanced technologies that made it a center of Islamic intellectual and scientific achievement. The city's engineers created an elaborate water management system that captured water from the Murghab River and distributed it through a network of underground canals called kares, allowing agriculture and urban life to flourish in an arid environment. These underground channels minimized water loss through evaporation and kept the water cool and clean, a sophisticated adaptation to local environmental conditions that demonstrated advanced hydrological knowledge. Merv's famous libraries and educational institutions attracted scholars from across the Islamic world, contributing to mathematical, astronomical, and medical knowledge that would eventually help spark the European Renaissance through translated texts. What makes Merv particularly significant is how it represents the sophisticated urban centers that flourished along the Silk Road, creating networks of knowledge exchange that connected China, India, the Middle East, and Europe for centuries. The city's cosmopolitan nature, with communities of different religions and ethnicities living and working together, created an environment where ideas could blend and evolve across cultural boundaries. Archaeological evidence reveals workshops for ceramics, glass, metal, and textiles, suggesting specialized production at industrial scales that supplied both local needs and long-distance trade networks. Among Merv's most famous residents was the astronomer and poet Omar Khayyam, whose mathematical work included development of a remarkably accurate calendar and solutions to cubic equations centuries before similar achievements in Europe. The city's architectural achievements included innovative uses of materials like fired brick, structured with arches and domes that distributed weight in ways that allowed for larger interior spaces than previous building methods permitted. The sudden destruction of Merv by Mongol forces in 1221 CE resulted in one of history's greatest losses of knowledge, with countless manuscripts destroyed and scholarly traditions disrupted. As stars sparkle above Central Asian deserts, imagine this vibrant intellectual center where astronomers tracked celestial movements with precision, where mathematicians developed new approaches to solving complex problems, and where the exchange of ideas across cultural boundaries created new syntheses of knowledge. What discoveries and innovations might have been lost when this great center of learning was destroyed? What calculations and observations recorded in now-vanished manuscripts might have changed the course of scientific history? Let the stars guide you now westward across the Mediterranean, to the island of Sicily, where the ancient Greek colony of Syracuse became one of the most powerful cities of the classical world, and home to one of history's greatest mathematical minds. Under the leadership of enlightened rulers like Hieron the Syracuse became a center of intellectual and artistic achievement, attracting philosophers, poets, and scientists from across the Mediterranean world. Among these was Archimedes, whose discoveries and inventions in the 3rd century BCE anticipated scientific and mathematical principles that wouldn't be fully rediscovered until the Renaissance and beyond. Archimedes' work on the principles of levers led him to declare, "Give me a place to stand, and I will move the earth," demonstrating his understanding of mechanical advantage that allowed small forces to move large objects. His calculation of pi and development of methods to measure curved surfaces and volumes laid foundations for integral calculus nearly 2,000 years before Newton and Leibniz. The famous Eureka moment, where he discovered how to measure the volume of irregular objects by observing water displacement while taking a bath, demonstrates the observational genius that characterized ancient scientific thinking at its best. What makes Syracuse particularly interesting is how it represents the sophisticated intellectual culture of ancient Greek colonies, where rational inquiry and empirical observation led to discoveries far ahead of their time. Archimedes' ingenious defensive machines during the Roman siege of Syracuse in 214-212 BCE, including cranes that could lift and drop enemy ships and possibly concentrated solar energy weapons using arrays of mirrors, demonstrated how theoretical knowledge could be applied to practical problems with remarkable effectiveness. The Great Theater of Syracuse, carved directly into the hillside and accommodating up to 15,000 spectators, represents sophisticated understanding of acoustics, allowing natural amplification of performers' voices without electronic assistance. The nearby Ear of Dionysius, a cave with remarkable acoustic properties that magnify sounds within it, demonstrates either deliberate engineering or careful selection of natural features for their sonic characteristics. These acoustic achievements suggest sophisticated understanding of sound properties that integrated with architectural design in ways we're only beginning to appreciate. As Mediterranean waves lap against Sicilian shores, imagine this center of ancient knowledge where mechanical principles were discovered through careful observation and logical analysis, where mathematical insights would remain unsurpassed for centuries, and where the integration of theory with practical application created innovations that seemed almost magical to contemporaries. What other discoveries might Archimedes have made that were lost with his death during the Roman conquest? What knowledge preserved in the famous Library of Alexandria might have built upon his work had it not been destroyed? Let Mediterranean currents carry you now eastward to the island of Crete, where we return to explore more deeply the sophisticated Minoan civilization that flourished from approximately 2700 to 1420 BCE. Beyond their famous palaces and artwork, the Minoans created technological and social innovations that were remarkably advanced for their time and would not be equaled for centuries after their civilization's decline. Their elaborate water management systems included sophisticated flush toilets connected to sewers with separate systems for rainwater and wastewater, hygienic technology that wouldn't become common in Europe until the 19th century CE. Minoan architecture employed advanced engineering techniques to create buildings resistant to the frequent earthquakes that affected the region, including flexible wood-reinforced structural systems and strategic use of lightness and strength in different building elements. The famous palace at Knossos featured ingenious systems for natural lighting and ventilation, with light wells and air shafts creating comfortable interior spaces without modern climate control technology. Archaeological evidence suggests the Minoans had developed a sophisticated understanding of pharmacology, using various plants and minerals for medicinal purposes in ways that anticipated much later medical developments. What makes Minoan civilization particularly fascinating is the evidence suggesting a social structure potentially more egalitarian than contemporary societies, with artistic representations showing women in prominent roles and architectural layouts suggesting less rigid social stratification than in mainland palaces of later periods. Their apparent emphasis on commercial and cultural exchange, rather than military conquest, offers an alternative model of how ancient civilizations could develop and thrive without the warfare-centered approaches that dominate many historical narratives. The Minoan writing systems, first Cretan hieroglyphs and later Linear A, remain undeciphered, leaving many aspects of their culture shrouded in mystery. What philosophical concepts might be encoded in these untranslated texts? What understandings of the natural world might they contain that would expand our view of ancient knowledge? The sophisticated nature of their material culture suggests equally sophisticated intellectual traditions that remain largely inaccessible to us. Recent archaeological work has revealed evidence of Minoan settlements and influence far beyond Crete itself, suggesting a maritime network more extensive than previously recognized, potentially reaching the Black Sea, the Levant, and possibly beyond. Their navigational knowledge must have been substantial to maintain these connections across the challenging Mediterranean environment, implying sophisticated understanding of winds, currents, and celestial navigation. As Aegean breezes carry the scent of wild herbs across ancient Minoan sites, imagine this island civilization whose engineering created living spaces of remarkable sophistication, whose social structures may have offered alternatives to the hierarchical models that dominated later European development, and whose intellectual traditions remain tantalizingly out of reach due to our inability to read their writing. What wisdom might they have possessed about creating sustainable societies? What knowledge might they have developed through their extensive maritime connections? Let gentle winds carry you now northward, to the heart of Europe, where the ancient Celtic cultures created sophisticated societies with distinctive artistic, technological, and intellectual traditions from approximately 800 BCE to the Roman conquests. Though often portrayed as primitive in contrast to Mediterranean civilizations, archaeological evidence reveals Celtic achievements in metallurgy, engineering, and agricultural innovation that demonstrate remarkable technical skill and environmental adaptation. Celtic ironworking technology was among the finest in the ancient world, producing tools and weapons of superior quality through sophisticated understanding of metallurgical principles, including carbon content control and pattern welding techniques. Their wheeled vehicles featured technological innovations, including metal rim wheels, sophisticated suspension systems using flexible wooden elements, and specialized designs for different purposes, from war chariots to heavy transport wagons. Celtic goldwork demonstrates masterful understanding of the metal's properties, creating objects of remarkable beauty and technical sophistication through techniques like granulation and filigree work that required precise temperature control and tool handling. What makes Celtic culture particularly interesting is how it represents sophisticated development without the urban centralization that characterized Mediterranean civilizations. Their settlement pattern of oppida, fortified settlements that combine defensive, commercial, and administrative functions, represented an alternative approach to spatial organization adapted to different environmental and social conditions. Archaeological evidence suggests they practiced selective breeding of both plants and animals, developing crop varieties and livestock breeds specifically adapted to northern European conditions. The Druids, Celtic religious specialists, whose traditions were primarily oral and therefore largely lost with Roman conquest, reportedly studied natural philosophy, astronomy, and mathematics alongside religious practices. Classical sources, though potentially biased, describe educational traditions requiring up to 20 years of memorization and study, suggesting sophisticated intellectual traditions maintained through non-written transmission. Recent archaeological work at sites like Marmont in Switzerland has revealed ritual practices of remarkable complexity, suggesting cosmological understanding that organize both time and space according to systematic principles. The famous Celtic calendar found at Coligny in France, a complex bronze tablet from the 2nd century CE, that tracked lunar and solar cycles, demonstrates sophisticated astronomical knowledge that allowed precise timing of agricultural and religious activities. This calendar reconciled lunar and solar cycles through a system of intercalation, adding days or months that maintained accuracy over long time periods, showing mathematical and observational sophistication comparable to other ancient calendar systems. As mist rises over European forests and meadows, imagine these Iron Age societies, whose technological innovations were adapted to specific environmental conditions, whose artistic traditions express sophisticated cosmological concepts through abstract symbolism, and whose intellectual achievements were largely lost through the accident of relying on oral rather than written transmission. What understanding of material properties informed their metallurgical achievements? What knowledge of natural cycles guided their agricultural innovations? Let forest pathways lead you now eastward, to the steppes of Ukraine and southern Russia, where the enigmatic Sarmatian culture dominated vast territories from approximately the 5th century BCE to the 4th century CE. Related to the Scythians but developing distinct cultural patterns, the Sarmatians created a nomadic civilization based on superb horsemanship, sophisticated metallurgy, and extensive trade networks connecting east and west along what would later become the Silk Road. Archaeological evidence from Sarmatian burials reveals remarkable achievements in goldwork and other metallurgy, creating objects that combine technical mastery with distinctive artistic vision. Their weapons technology included the innovative heavy lance used in conjunction with saddles, with high front and back supports, essentially inventing heavy cavalry tactics that would dominate warfare for centuries afterward. Sarmatian armor designs included sophisticated scale armor for both riders and horses, providing protection while maintaining mobility in ways that influenced later military technology across Europe and Asia. What makes the Sarmatians particularly interesting is the evidence suggesting women played significant roles as warriors and leaders, with numerous female burials containing weapons and armor alongside traditionally feminine items. Greek and Roman sources describe Sarmatian women riding, hunting, and fighting alongside men, practices confirmed by archaeological findings of weapon injuries on female skeletons consistent with participation in combat. This pattern challenges conventional assumptions about universal gender roles in ancient societies, and suggests alternative social organizations adapted to the demands of nomadic pastoralist lifestyles. Despite lacking permanent settlements, the Sarmatians maintained sophisticated craft traditions requiring specialized knowledge and stable learning environments, suggesting social structures that preserved and transmitted technical knowledge across generations despite their mobile lifestyle. Their distinctive art style, featuring stylized animal motifs and geometric patterns, influenced visual traditions across vast territories and continues to inspire modern designers with its dynamic compositions and abstract elegance. As winds sweep across the Eurasian steppes, imagine these skilled riders whose mastery of horse breeding, training, and equipment created military advantages that allowed them to dominate vast territories, whose social structures included roles for women that differed from contemporary Mediterranean societies, and whose technological innovations in weaponry and armor influenced warfare across two continents. What knowledge of animal behavior informed their close partnership with horses? What social adaptations allowed them to maintain sophisticated craft traditions within a nomadic lifestyle? Let step pathways guide you now, southward to the Caucasus Mountains, where the ancient kingdom of Urartu flourished between the 9th and 6th centuries BCE, creating a sophisticated civilization adapted to the challenging mountainous environment between modern Armenia, Turkey, and Iran. Urartian engineers created remarkable water management systems, including canals, reservoirs, and aqueducts, some stretching over 40 miles, that transformed arid landscapes into productive agricultural regions through careful understanding of hydraulic principles. Their fortresses, built on seemingly inaccessible mountainous outcrops, combine natural defensive positions with sophisticated architectural engineering to create impregnable positions that controlled trade routes and strategic resources. Urartian metalworkers developed advanced techniques for bronze working, creating objects of both practical utility and artistic beauty that demonstrate mastery of complex casting and finishing methods. Their distinctive helmet designs, combining protection with visibility and comfort, were so effective they were widely adopted by neighboring cultures and influenced military equipment design across the ancient Near East. What makes Urartu particularly fascinating is how this sophisticated civilization developed in geographical isolation, adapting technologies to the specific challenges of their mountainous homeland, while maintaining connections with the wider Near Eastern world through strategic control of trade routes. Their writing system, adapted from Assyrian cuneiform but modified for their own language, preserved administrative records, royal inscriptions, and religious texts that provide glimpses into their cultural worldview and political organization. Urartian sites like Tushpa, modern Van, featured massive walls constructed of stone blocks weighing up to several tons each, precisely fitted without mortar yet resilient enough to withstand earthquakes for thousands of years. Their sophisticated understanding of acoustic properties is demonstrated in structures like the speaking room at Erobni Fortress, where architectural design creates unusual sound effects that may have served ceremonial or administrative purposes. Archaeological evidence suggests they practiced sophisticated metallurgical techniques, including the ability to produce iron with precisely controlled carbon content, creating tools and weapons of superior quality. As mountain breezes carry the scent of alpine flowers across ancient Urartian sites, imagine this highland civilization whose engineering transformed mountainous landscapes into productive regions, whose fortresses controlled key trade routes between major civilizations, and whose technological adaptations to their unique environment created innovations that influenced surrounding regions. What understanding of fluid dynamics informed their sophisticated water management systems? What knowledge of geological principles guided their selection and modification of natural defensive positions? Let mountain paths lead you now eastward to the high valleys of Tibet, where the ancient Zhangzhung civilization developed distinctive cultural patterns, adapted to one of the world's most challenging environments between approximately 500 BCE and 625 CE. Though less well known than many ancient cultures, recent archaeological work has revealed sophisticated achievements in architecture, metallurgy, and artistic traditions that flourished at altitudes where simply surviving requires special physiological and technological adaptations. Zhangzhung builders created structures incorporating sophisticated understanding of thermal properties, using thick walls with high thermal mass, strategic orientation to capture solar heat, and architectural features that minimized heat loss in the extreme cold of high-altitude winters. Their metallurgists developed techniques for working copper, silver, gold, and iron, despite the challenges of achieving and maintaining high temperatures in low-oxygen, high-altitude environments, a technical achievement requiring precise understanding of how atmospheric conditions affect metallurgical processes. What makes Zhangzhung particularly intriguing is its connection to the pre-Buddhist Bon religious tradition, which includes sophisticated cosmological models, medical knowledge, and meditative practices that demonstrate complex intellectual traditions developed in relative isolation from other major civilizations. The Bone tradition preserves extensive texts describing Zhang Zung culture, including astronomical knowledge used for calendar calculations, sophisticated understanding of human psychology, and what some scholars interpret as early scientific thinking embedded within religious frameworks. Archaeological sites like Hunglung Silver Castle show evidence of sophisticated urban planning adapted to mountainous terrain, with structures built to withstand the region's frequent seismic activity through flexible construction methods. Zhang Zung artifacts demonstrate mastery of various artistic techniques, including metalwork, with precise detailing, textile production, adapted to local materials, and distinctive decorative motifs that reflect their unique cultural perspective developed in the rarefied atmosphere of the Tibetan Plateau. As prayer flags flutter in the thin mountain air, imagine this high-altitude civilization, whose technological and cultural adaptations allowed them to thrive in one of Earth's most challenging environments, whose intellectual traditions developed sophisticated understanding of astronomical cycles and human psychology, and whose legacy continues in the living Bun tradition that preserves elements of their knowledge. What understanding of human physiology informed their medical traditions adapted to high-altitude conditions? What astronomical observations, made from some of the world's highest inhabited regions with exceptionally clear atmospheric conditions, might have given them unique perspectives on celestial patterns? Let your consciousness drift now across the vast Pacific once more, to the remote islands of Hawaii, where Polynesian voyagers created a sophisticated civilization adapted to isolated volcanic landscapes, beginning around 1000 CE. Hawaiian engineers developed extensive agricultural systems, including massive stone-faced terraces for taro cultivation and sophisticated fish ponds that functioned as aquacultural systems, essentially farming fish through understanding of tidal patterns, fish behavior, and ecological relationships. Their Hepuas and land management system divided islands into wedge-shaped territories extending from mountain ridges to the ocean, creating self-contained units that incorporated all necessary resources from different ecological zones. This sophisticated approach to landscape organization demonstrated deep understanding of ecological relationships, watershed dynamics, and sustainable resource management principles that maintained productivity without depleting natural systems. Hawaiian navigators maintained their extraordinary wayfinding traditions that had allowed their ancestors to discover and settle these remote islands, preserving knowledge of star patterns, ocean swells, cloud formations, and other natural indicators that enabled precise navigation across thousands of miles of open ocean without instruments. What makes Hawaiian civilization particularly fascinating is how it represents remarkable cultural adaptation to isolation, developing sophisticated technologies and social structures, using only the limited resources available on volcanic islands, thousands of miles from any continent. Their stone tools, lacking metal due to the island's geological formation, were crafted with such precision and effectiveness that they could fell trees, shape canoes, and create monumental structures using only basalt, wood, and fiber tools and fasteners. The famous hula dance tradition, far from being merely entertainment, functioned as a sophisticated memory system encoding historical information, genealogical knowledge, and cultural values in movement patterns that could be accurately transmitted across generations. This body-based knowledge preservation system represents one solution to maintaining complex information in a primarily oral culture, demonstrating cognitive sophistication in how information was encoded, preserved, and transmitted. Recent archaeological work has revealed evidence of sophisticated astronomical knowledge encoded in the orientation of Heiseo temple platforms, many of which align with specific celestial events including solstices, equinoxes, and the rising or setting of particular stars, important in Hawaiian cosmology and navigation. These alignments demonstrate precise observational astronomy that tracked celestial movements over long time periods and encoded this knowledge in architectural form. As tropical breezes carry the scent of plumeria across ancient Hawaiian sites, imagine this island civilization whose careful resource management allowed dense populations to thrive sustainably on limited land, whose navigational knowledge connected distant islands into a maritime network spanning thousands of miles, and whose cultural adaptations preserved complex knowledge through sophisticated memory systems encoded in dance, chant, and landscape modification. What understanding of marine ecosystems informed their fish pond design? What observational precision guided their astronomical knowledge, developed through generations of watching the stars from the middle of the world's largest ocean? Let Pacific currents carry you now to South America once more, where the mysterious Nazca culture created not only the famous lines we mentioned earlier, but a sophisticated civilization adapted to one of the world's driest deserts between approximately 100 BCE and 800 CE. Nazca engineers created remarkable underground aqueduct systems called puquios, some still functioning today, that tapped into underground water sources using specially designed spiral access shafts that create airflow through the Venturi effect, increasing water flow through understanding of fluid dynamics principles. Their ceramic traditions demonstrate remarkable technical skill and artistic sophistication, creating vessels with up to 9 distinct colors using different firing techniques that required precise control of temperature and oxygen levels, a technological achievement not matched in Europe until much later. Nazca textiles display extraordinary technical complexity, with some fabrics having more than 200 threads per inch created without mechanized looms, demonstrating remarkable skill in spinning, dyeing, and weaving, using only hand tools and observation-based knowledge, transmitted across generations. What makes the Nazca particularly fascinating is how they adapted to an environment receiving less than an inch of rainfall annually, developing agricultural systems that use careful understanding of microclimates, groundwater dynamics, and irrigation techniques to create productive farmland in seemingly impossible conditions. Their famous lines and geoglyphs, created by removing surface stones to reveal lighter soil beneath, demonstrate sophisticated spatial planning and geometric knowledge that maintain perfect proportions across enormous scales without the ability to view the complete designs from ground level. Recent archaeological work suggests some Nazca lines may have marked the paths of underground water sources, essentially mapping invisible resources on the desert surface through understanding of geological and hydrological patterns. Other designs appear aligned with astronomical events, including solstices and the appearance of particular star clusters, suggesting they function partially as a celestial calendar, guiding agricultural activities through astronomical observations. The purpose of these remarkable ground drawings remains debated, with theories ranging from religious processional paths to astronomical calendars to maps of underground water sources, and possibly all of these simultaneously in a cultural system that integrated practical knowledge with spiritual understanding. What's clear is that they represent sophisticated understanding of geometry, spatial relationships, and landscape-scale planning that required coordinated effort maintained across many generations. As night falls over the Nazca Desert, imagine this remarkable civilization that transformed one of Earth's most challenging environments into productive landscape through careful observation and engineering, whose artistic traditions created works of extraordinary sophistication using limited materials, and whose mysterious lines continue to inspire wonder and speculation. What understanding of underground water movement informed their aqueduct systems? What observational astronomy guided their creation of geoglyphs aligned with specific celestial events? Let desert winds carry you now northward, to Mesoamerica once more, where the mysterious city of Teotihuacan flourished between approximately 100 BCE and 550 CE, creating what was then one of the world's largest urban centers with sophisticated planning, engineering, and artistic traditions that would influence all subsequent Mesoamerican civilizations. The city's famous Street of the Dead and surrounding grid layout demonstrate precise urban planning on a massive scale, with the entire city oriented 15.5 degrees east of north, an alignment that corresponds to the setting of the Pleiades star cluster on specific dates significant in Mesoamerican calendrical traditions. Teotihuacan engineers developed a unique architectural system using talud tablero slope and panel construction that distributed weight effectively while creating distinctive visual aesthetics that would be emulated across Mesoamerica for centuries afterward. Their apartment compounds housed most of the city's estimated 100,000 residents in well-designed multifamily units with drainage systems, interior courtyards, and specialized activity areas, an urban housing solution that maintained high density while providing comfortable living conditions. What makes Teotihuacan particularly fascinating is how the city appears to have developed a distinctive multi-ethnic society, with neighborhoods housing people from different regions and cultural backgrounds, who nevertheless participated in shared civic identity and cooperative projects. Archaeological evidence suggests specialized production districts for different crafts, including obsidian working, ceramic production, and feather working, indicating sophisticated economic organization that coordinated complex supply chains and distribution networks. The city's engineers created sophisticated water management systems, including canalized rivers, drainage tunnels beneath major structures, and water supply systems that maintain public and private access throughout the urban center. Recent archaeological discoveries beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent revealed large quantities of liquid mercury and evidence of mica layers, materials with specific conductive and reflective properties that suggest sophisticated understanding of these substances' unusual characteristics. The purpose and meaning of Teotihuacan's precise astronomical alignments continue to be debated, with evidence suggesting the city's layout encoded complex calendrical information related to cycles of Venus, the solar year, and possibly other celestial phenomena. The careful orientation of structures and pathways created specific light and shadow effects on significant dates, essentially turning the entire city into a three-dimensional calendar marking time through architectural astronomy. As stars wheel above the ancient city's silent pyramids, imagine this massive urban center where people from diverse backgrounds created a shared civilization of remarkable sophistication, whose architects and engineers transformed a valley landscape into precisely aligned monumental structures, and whose legacy would influence all subsequent Mesoamerican cultures. What mathematical principles guided their precise urban planning? What astronomical knowledge informed the city's orientation to specific celestial events? Let your mind drift now back across the Atlantic to the western coast of Africa, where the remarkable Kingdom of Benin developed sophisticated artistic and technological traditions between the 13th and 19th centuries CE. The famous Benin bronzes, actually made of brass through sophisticated lost wax casting techniques, demonstrate metallurgical mastery that produced works of such artistic refinement and technical complexity that they astonished European visitors who had previously characterized African cultures as primitive. Benin's urban planning created a massive city surrounded by concentric earthen walls and moats that together constituted the largest earthwork in the world prior to the mechanical age, a construction achievement requiring sophisticated engineering knowledge and massive coordinated labor. Their metalworkers developed precise methods for controlling the chemical composition of copper alloys, creating materials with specific properties suited to different applications through understanding of how different elements affected the final product. What makes Benin particularly fascinating is how this sophisticated kingdom developed and maintained technological traditions of remarkable precision and artistic refinement despite being largely unknown to the wider world until relatively recent times. Their palace architecture incorporated specific design elements that created natural cooling through airflow patterns, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of thermodynamics applied to architectural problems in a tropical climate. The kingdom maintained detailed historical records preserved through both oral tradition and physical documentation in the form of brass plaques that recorded significant events, genealogical information, and cultural practices. This systematic approach to preserving historical knowledge allowed for cultural continuity and refinement of traditions across many generations, creating institutional memory that supported the kingdom's sophisticated technological and artistic achievements. Recent archaeological work has revealed evidence of extensive urban planning beyond the capital city, with networks of settlements connected by roads and trading relationships that maintained economic and cultural cohesion across a substantial territory. The technical sophistication of Benin's metallurgical tradition suggests long-term development and refinement of knowledge about material properties, firing temperatures, and chemical interactions that would have required systematic observation and knowledge transmission across generations. As tropical rain falls on ancient earthworks, imagine this West African kingdom, whose metallurgists created works of such technical perfection and artistic refinement that they rank among the world's greatest artistic traditions, whose engineers created massive landscape modifications without mechanical assistance, and whose knowledge systems preserved historical and technical information with remarkable fidelity across centuries. What understanding of material properties informed their sophisticated metallurgy? What organizational systems coordinated the massive labor required for their monumental constructions? Let rainfall carry you now southward, to the heart of Africa, where the ancient civilization of Great Zimbabwe created monumental stone architecture and sophisticated trading networks between approximately the 11th and 15th century CE. The famous Great Enclosure, with walls up to 36 feet high and 20 feet thick, built without mortar yet standing for centuries, demonstrates sophisticated understanding of engineering principles, including load distribution, foundation preparation, and thermal expansion management in stone structures. Zimbabwe's stonemasons developed distinctive construction techniques that created stable, durable walls using locally available granite, carefully shaped and fitted to create structures that have withstood centuries of seasonal temperature fluctuations, rainfall, and vegetation growth. Archaeological evidence indicates they maintained extensive trading connections reaching to China, Persia, and the Arab world, exchanging gold and ivory for porcelain, glass, and other imported goods across networks spanning thousands of miles. What makes Great Zimbabwe particularly significant is how this sophisticated civilization has been systematically erased or misattributed in historical accounts influenced by colonial perspectives that refuse to acknowledge indigenous African achievements. Early European visitors and colonial authorities insisted these structures must have been built by Phoenicians, Arabs, or other non-African peoples, despite clear archaeological evidence of local development and continuous African habitation. Recent archaeological work has revealed evidence of sophisticated urban planning, with distinct zones for different activities, specialized production areas for crafts including metalworking and cotton textile production, and carefully designed water management systems that captured and stored rainfall in strategic locations. The spatial organization of the site, with clear separation between elite residential areas, ritual spaces, and general habitation zones, suggests sophisticated social organization and urban planning principles. The famous conical tower within the Great Enclosure, a solid stone structure over 30 feet tall with precise cylindrical form, remains enigmatic in its specific purpose, but demonstrates remarkable masonry skill in creating perfectly regular curved walls, maintaining consistent form throughout their height. The placement of entrances, pathways, and architectural features throughout the site creates specific patterns of movement that control access to different areas, suggesting sophisticated understanding of how built environment shapes social interaction. As African sunlight warms ancient stone walls, imagine this powerful kingdom whose masons created monumental architecture without mortar or mechanical assistance, whose traders maintained connections with distant civilizations across thousands of miles, and whose achievements were systematically denied or misattributed by colonial perspectives, unable to acknowledge indigenous African sophistication. What engineering principles guided their remarkable stonework? What social organization coordinated the massive labor and specialized knowledge required for these monumental constructions? Let your consciousness drift once more across vast oceans, returning to the Mediterranean world where we began, completing our global journey through ancient wisdom and achievement. As we've circled the planet exploring remarkable civilizations from every continent, certain patterns emerge that challenge conventional narratives about human development and capability. Across these diverse cultures, separated by vast distances and seemingly insurmountable barriers to communication, we find common threads: sophisticated astronomical knowledge encoded in architecture, remarkable engineering achievements that anticipate modern principles, sustainable resource management systems adapted to local environments, and knowledge preservation methods that maintain complex information across generations. These commonalities raise fascinating questions about human potential and the nature of discovery. Perhaps most humbling is recognizing how often these ancient societies achieved sophisticated understanding in fields ranging from mathematics to medicine, engineering to astronomy, developing knowledge that would be lost and later rediscovered centuries or millennia later. This pattern challenges progressive views of history that imagine human development as a steady march from primitive to advanced, suggesting instead a more complex pattern of rises and falls, of knowledge gained, lost, and sometimes preserved in unexpected ways. The precision of ancient architectural alignments to astronomical events, found in cultures from Egypt to Hawaii, Cambodia to Peru, suggests sophisticated observational astronomy maintained over generations without modern instruments. The engineering achievements that created earthquake-resistant structures from Peru to Japan, water management systems from Nazca to Angkor, and acoustic designs from India to Greece demonstrate deep understanding of natural principles applied with remarkable effectiveness. What if conventional history, with its focus on written records and monumental constructions, has systematically underestimated the knowledge and capabilities of cultures that preserved information through oral tradition, expressed understanding through practical technologies rather than theoretical texts, or developed in environments where organic materials rarely survive to be studied by archaeologists? What aspects of ancient wisdom might we be missing due to these methodological biases? As you drift towards sleep, consider that our journey has only scratched the surface of human achievement across time and space. For every site and civilization we've explored, dozens more await discovery or deeper understanding. The conventional history we've been taught may represent just fragments of a much richer and more complex human story, limited not just by what has been lost to time, but by our own assumptions about what was possible in earlier eras. The megalithic structures that dot our planet, from Göbekli Tepe to Great Zimbabwe, from Sacsayhuaman to Stonehenge, stand as enduring monuments to human ingenuity and as challenges to our understanding of our own past. They invite us to approach ancient cultures not with condescension about their primitive nature, but with humility about what they may have understood that we are only beginning to rediscover. Let these ancient mysteries carry you into the realm of dreams, where perhaps some echo of humanity's forgotten wisdom might speak through the language of symbols and archetypes that connect us across time to our ancestors. What dreams might come when we contemplate the true depth and breadth of human history? What whispers from the ancient past might find their way into our sleeping minds? Tomorrow, you'll awaken refreshed and perhaps carrying some small fragment of insight from this journey through time. But for now, let yourself sink deeper into restful sleep, cradled in the knowledge that you're part of a human story far richer, more complex, and more fascinating than conventional histories have led us to believe. The monuments and mysteries we've explored tonight will still be waiting, their stones warm in the sun or cool under starlight, their secrets preserved for those curious enough to look beyond conventional explanations and ask the deeper questions. What did our ancestors know? How did they achieve such remarkable feats? What wisdom might they have possessed that we have yet to rediscover? As your consciousness drifts towards sleep, imagine those ancient stargazers who carefully aligned their monuments to celestial events, the engineers who fitted massive stones with impossible precision, the navigators who crossed vast oceans guided only by their understanding of natural patterns. They too looked up at the same stars we see today, contemplated the same human questions, and sought to encode their understanding in works that would outlast their individual lives. In that contemplation of the stars, in that desire to create something enduring, in that quest to understand our place in the cosmos, we find a connection that spans thousands of years and links us directly to those ancient minds. Despite the vast differences in technology and culture, something essential about being human remains unchanged across millennia. Sleep now, and let the wisdom of the ancients flow through your dreams like the Nile, like the Ganges, like the thousand rivers that have nourished civilizations since time immemorial. Tomorrow is another day to explore, to question, to wonder at the magnificent story of human achievement that stretches back far beyond written history into the misty realms, where archaeology and mythology intertwine. Good night, fellow explorer of ancient mysteries. May your dreams be filled with pyramid builders and star navigators, with megalith movers and cosmic mathematicians, all those ancestors whose achievements still challenge our understanding and inspire our imagination across the vast river of time that connects their world to ours.